Welcome back to the Bob Fu Report. Today we want to cover this unprecedented development showing the Chinese Communist Party's aggressive transnational repression attempts. Over 100 overseas Chinese Communist Party police stations were found setting up. How is this possible? And what are the impacts? According to Safeguard Defenders, a human rights NGO based in Sweden, published their research initially in September, reporting 54 police stations. And then, and 2 centers, the Chinese police were set up around the globe. The hosting nations, including the United States, 4 of them here, Australia, Canada has 5, France has 4, Israel, South Korea, United Kingdom, Ireland, and many other nations. Some stations, ironically, are set up, these Chinese overseas police stations, with the help of the hosting nations, according to the report and CNN. So all this actually relates to the Chinese Communist Party's aggressive approach on their transnational repression. It used to be when the Communist Party were not happy with a dissident or with a human rights NGO, they would just use their embassy staff or fake kind of agents pretending to be reporters in Washington, D.C., in Brussels, to kind of send you a warning. And I myself actually experienced that over the years. Several times when I was in D.C., I was hosting some the house church leaders or human rights lawyers or the prisoner of conscience or their family members. We were being followed clearly by the Chinese embassy cars and all the way to our hotel. And the U.S. law enforcement confirmed that. And sometimes I was even chased into the toilet room in the European Union building in Brussels by then a Chinese agent would give me his business card, like the journalist, the bureau chief of China Legal Daily or Xinhua, I mean, just as a way of intimidation. But how would we kind of anticipate or even expect the Chinese Communist Party would physically send a institutional station, police stations, in the name of taking care of the Chinese overseas for extending driver license or passports? But these are all functions traditionally like consular affairs functions by the Chinese consulate or embassy. And now they just bluntly put their own police station, try to use this way to control, intimidate, harass, and control, and basically threaten those overseas Chinese and also any foreigners, I mean the citizens in the United States and other countries. If you are having a visa or intention to visit China, so you will be the target. And one of the clear target that is widely reported was Mr. Wang Jingyu. And he was put on the most wanted list as a young man in his 20s during the COVID time for simply publicly on his social media and calling out the Chinese government propaganda of the number of Chinese military casualties when the CCP propaganda reporting with the India when China and India and the border have military clashes in the past few years. So he was being put into black jail in Dubai, UAE, when he was on his way flying to the United States. And after our effort, and of course, international media and NGO pressure and the US government intervention, so UAE released him from prison after he was being interrogated directly by the Chinese consular general in Dubai. So she was tortured, mistreated in the black jail, in a villa transformed black jail cell. I mean, with the multiple cells over there, and she even heard Uyghur prisoners being incarcerated, imprisoned after they were intercepted on their way to Istanbul in Turkey by the UAE authority and the Chinese. And later on, China Aid, we have to send our staff, our rescuers to both Istanbul and to the UAE and rescuing both Mr. Wang Jingyu and his fiancée to Ukraine before the war broke. And then China locate them in a very hurried rescue effort, phase 2. So we have to send another group and to Ukraine and help them get to Netherlands, where they find asylum approved in Netherlands. And so this is happening to Mr. Wang Jingyu, and now the Chinese overseas police stations in Netherlands, in other European countries are activated to hunt him and his fiancée. And we have, I will give you more details later. At another case is the Mayflower Church. I mean, they had to escape to Thailand, and now with the 64 members are being stuck over there and being threatened and hunted every day by the Chinese agents. And of course, the CCP's influence in the Middle East basically is huge, from Egypt to Bahrain to UAE, as it is mentioned. The Uyghurs were being detained in these countries, and some were handed over to China and basically transferred back to the Chinese concentration camp. So this new wave of the overseas law enforcement in the free world soils is just very, very alarming and intriguing. And Wang Jingyu, we talk about his case in other episodes of Balfour Report in the past. And recently, he was even being trapped in several European countries. The CCP agents basically registered hotel bookings in his name with his passport information, and falsely attribute crimes like possessing contraband and intending to blow up a police station. And so all of a sudden, Mr. Wang Jingyu was being called by the Dutch police, by the German police, by the Belgian police, by the Norwegian police, at least 5, 6 countries in the European Union are being alerted. I mean, even myself, just recently, were being booked with 2 hotel rooms in Washington, D.C. So this is a new tactic, a new way, and the Dutch police said at least 14 individuals involved in this malicious, vicious operation, and all of them are connected with the Chinese embassy. So if you're watching on this, those Chinese agents who are involved in this, you can't escape your responsibility for practically making the criminal threat against the innocent citizens in the United States, in these European countries. So you will be held accountable in the end. And for the Mayflower Church, many of their family members in mainland China had been harassed, and even the Chinese consulate in Jeju Island made phone calls calling them treason, citizens, and ask them to go back to China to surrender as criminals. So when they escaped to Thailand in Bangkok, in front of the two Associated Press reporters, and the Chinese agents would broke into the restaurant where they are being interviewed, and using cameras recording, and forced the AP reporters to suspend and disrupt basically their interview. So this is basically a new way of how the CCP's belligerent behavior. Safeguard defenders made some recommendations on the reports, basically urging those countries involved hosting or being forced to host, or the CCP set up this overseas police stations to thoroughly investigate these so-called police service centers and their underpinning United Front networks, because the Communist Party used their so-called expatriates, and some are their citizens of the United States, Netherlands, and other European countries already working in these police service centers, and also to denounce and investigate the transnational repression by the CCP in a systematic way. I think also in my latest congressional hearing in front of the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom commissioners, I also recommend given these transnational suppressions by the CCP, there should be a database between the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom and the Congressional Executive Commission on China, CECC, to document this transnational repression activities, because often when those Chinese students in the multiple American universities in all over the United States, and citizens in New York to Los Angeles, where Chinese are concentrating, when they receive these threats, they don't know where to report. They are even afraid, to report it, because those now overseas Chinese police stations made them kind of feel scared and reminded where they used to live in China. The big brother, the police would knock your door and just send you a warning and threaten your children's even schooling in the United States, in Europe. So we need the U.S. law enforcement to step up their enforcement of the laws. I mean, this to threaten American citizens and even the visitors in the United States. I remember a few years ago when President Trump was still in office, when I visited the White House and met with the Deputy National Security Advisor, and the senior director for Asia in the National Security Council, Matt Pottinger. He said, yeah, at least President Trump's policy was this kind of transnational repression in the U.S. soil to any individuals, even a visitor who came to visit their children or tourists in the United States from China should not be tolerated. That should be documented and reported. But we need a mechanism. I know the FBI had set up a transnational repression handling center based in Washington, D.C., but they have a smaller staff. So I think a congressional joint task force, joint effort to kind of combine the information and to document and to even help verify. Not only this is a public interest for the American people, but also this is a very serious threat. The CCP's major threat. I mean, they're not only here in the U.S. academic institutions stealing the U.S. Intellectual properties. And as FBI Director Rees said recently, the CCP is the biggest thief. I mean, basically stealing more U.S. Intellectual property information than any others. So let's keep praying, and this could happen, and those belligerent and barbaric activities could be stopped. And I want to end up with an encouraging quote that even in China, when the Chinese brothers and sisters were suffering the religious persecution, they're not discouraged. This is one story I just want to read. It says a Christian sister from Covenant House Church in Shanxi was asked by the police when she was arrested for house church activities, "When did you start loving your Lord passionately?" The sister said, "I only began to love the Lord passionately after you arrested me. When the shackles worn out my feet, I realized a little bit how much Christ had paid for me." End the quote. Although the suffering remained, the brothers and sisters were no longer afraid, but were very joyful, released, and did not despise the brothers and sisters whose faith had become weakened out of persecution. So let's not our heart be discouraged, because the gospel of Jesus Christ, the King of Peace, the Prince of Peace, the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, Jesus Christ, at this Christmas season, still live and well. So Merry Christmas.
Thank you, Bob, for that report. In other news, Early Rain Covenant Church elder Qin Defu was released from prison on December 9th, after serving 4 years for the falsified charge of illegal business operations. He was actually, interestingly enough, released during Early Rain Covenant Church's virtual testimony sharing covering the 12/9 crackdown. For those who are unaware, the 12/9 crackdown was in 2018 on December 9th, when police and Chinese authorities broke in to Early Rain's campus, confiscated personal belongings, arrested over 100 believers, interrogated them, tortured them, violently arresting them from the campus. It was a very brutal incident. So these believers got together for a virtual meeting on December 9th, kind of rehashing and testifying about their experiences from that day. There were about 2 sessions, one in the morning, one at night. Both Elder Li Yingqiang from Early Rain and preacher Dai Zichao were also taken away to the police station during this virtual hearing. They kind of had to change who the owner was of the virtual Zoom meeting a couple of times for this reason. However, it ended up working out, and it was apparently a very wonderful time and experience for many people. Even Minister An Yankui was there. But Elder Li Yingqiang made a statement on social media after he was released from the police station, and he said the quote, greatest blessing of the 4-year anniversary was the release of Elder Qin Defu. Now, not many details are readily apparent about Qin Defu and what his conditions were like in prison. Qin Defu was more of a manager of the church and less of somebody like Wang Yi, an outspoken pastor. So it's pretty easy to see why we would have a little less information about him. However, back before he was arrested, the church was going to an event to commemorate a very notable earthquake on May 12th. And CCP operatives and police had sent kind of a memo basically putting Qin Defu on the map, saying that he was the backbone of Early Rain Covenant Church. And he made a joke about it and said, I don't know if I am the backbone of Early Rain Covenant Church because I'm so skinny. Anyway, Qin Defu pleaded his innocence to the judge, shared the gospel with him, but we're pretty unaware of what his conditions were like in prison. We don't know if he was malnourished. We don't know if he had any kind of mistreatment. But we do know that now China Aid sources have confirmed that he's well and resting at home. One of his children was actually born in March before his arrest in December of 2018. And so he's getting to know them now. They're now 4 years old. Our next story is a very crucial update regarding citizen journalist Zhang Zhan. Zhang Zhan's mental state has improved considerably since our last update in March or February, but her condition seems worrying for her mother and lawyer. Now, some of you remember that Zhang Zhan was a citizen journalist, as I said, who was sentenced to 4 years for picking quarrels and provoking trouble. Why, you might ask? Because she exposed the COVID-19 response in Wuhan. She was arrested back in May of 2020, and she actually went on hunger strike to protest her arbitrary detainment. But this hunger strike really put her life in danger. The CCP guards, the prison guards, tried to force feed her using a nasal tube, and her life hung in the balance for quite some time. So much so that China Aid gave her an award for her bravery known as the Zhao Freedom Award, given to human rights activists and pro-democracy activists in mainland China for their bravery and for standing up to the CCP. Now, she quit her hunger strike in February, and she does seem to be improving mentally. She sends letters to her mother on a consistent basis, and they've had quite a few virtual meetings since then. However, she has not gained much weight since her hunger strike. As many Chinese dissidents who've done the same will tell you, you have intense hunger during the hunger strike, and obviously that is a role. But once you begin eating food again, like actually eating it and not being force-fed, it can have a pretty catastrophic consequences for your stomach. It can feel really painful to eat. And so even though she was as little as 88 pounds, she's only gotten to about 94 pounds according to the latest update. So we're going to be watching this case very closely and seeing just how Zhang Zhan maybe improves her condition over the next few months, maybe the next half year. Stay tuned to ChinaAid.org for more information. I also want to bring up that we at China Aid have announced the recipient of the 2022 Zhao Freedom Award, Miss Xu Qian. Miss Xu Qian was the Secretary General of a human rights group called China Human Rights Watch, and she was integral, just completely ingrained in the pro-democracy movement in China, and she's made a very vast impact. And so she's right now in prison. She has had a secret trial, but she's not, in fact, been given some kind of public verdict. But she's being tried for inciting subversion of state power. Because remember, the Chinese government, they don't really care if you're a great person and you're doing great things for other people. If you're coming against the Chinese Communist Party and oppressing its own citizenry, then that's inciting subversion of state power. So Anyway, we have a 3-minute video on our YouTube channel kind of discussing not only who Xu Chen was, but why she's so important and more of her charges in her case. So check it out on China Aid's YouTube channel. Now, our final story today covers the forced marriage of Uyghur women to Han Chinese men. A report from UHRP, the Uyghur Human Rights Project, illustrated how the government incentivized and forced interethnic marriages occurring as soon as 2014 in the Xinjiang region. Now, the Chinese state and the state media maintains that the interethnic marriages are to promote ethnic unity and social stability, but according to UHRP rep Zubayra Shamseden, it's uneven. Take a listen.
The marriage is always they forcing Uyghur women to marry the Han men, but we didn't see any promotional documents or in materials that they are encouraging Han girls to marry Uyghur men. We didn't see that at all. I mean, we're not seeing any kind of government official document or anything that is that forcing is kind of another way of oppression against the Uyghurs, because they're conditioning those Uyghur women. If that woman doesn't get married to Han Chinese, the authority threatening them that either the parents, like elderly parents, or male siblings will be sent to concentration camps. Imagine what would those girls do? I mean, it's absolutely heartbreaking, and I don't know. It's just a disgrace that the conditioning with your loved ones, you're destroying a culture, you're destroying a people, you're destroying an ethnicity, you're destroying just everything, including language, religion, way of life, streets, houses, just completely. It's kind of all-way out attack on Uyghurs. So that's why we call it genocide, because there is no space to breathe, no space or no little thing to make you or keep you as a Uyghur and Uyghur identity, Uyghur society, Uyghur family.
Not only that, but Uyghur women must comply or their family members could pay a harrowing price. An estimated 1 to 2 million people suffer in Xinjiang concentration camps, an overwhelming majority of which are Uyghurs. Now, of course, there's also Kazakhs, other Turkic Muslim minorities, and even some Christians. But they're not only killing the Uyghurs and these people, but according to Zubayra, this is just another strategy of erasing their people off the face of the planet. Thank you so much, Zubayra, for joining us today on the Bob Fu Report. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.